Good evening, Portsmouth, and welcome to WSCA LP 106.1 Community Portsmouth Radio. We have a great guest tonight in studio. We have Jason Morse. He's going to tell us about Bigfoot. This is a great subject. We've been a lot of you have asked for this, and we finally brought it to you. I'm Bobby Mack. I'll be your host for the next hour or so, and you are entering the Paranormal Zone. Jason, welcome.
Thank you, Bob.
It is now 5:02. Let's talk a little bit about your local weather. What a beautiful day out there today. It's in the 80s. Tomorrow's going to be another beautiful day in the 80s, so enjoy the weather. Hang around Portsmouth, go to the beaches. It's a great day for it, Jason, right? Jason is with a team called the Crypto Team, correct, Jason?
Crypto Crew, yes.
Crypto Crew, okay. Tell us a little bit about that.
We're a skeptical group that we deal in everything paranormal. We specialize in Bigfoot, UFOs, but we will dip our hands into just about anything.
Great. Now, you're going to hear tonight, listeners, that the question is going to be asked, is Bigfoot in New Hampshire? It is, and we have some statistics to show you from one county only that we pulled that we'll talk about a little later, Jason. But tell us when people try to get a hold of you, because some of our folks like to get on the website up front, kind of study what you're doing, and maybe they can send us questions. What is your website?
It's www.cryptocrew.com. We also have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/cryptocrew.
Okay, so listeners of the Paranormal, so you can get on there and you can follow us on that. There's a lot of great video on that, Jason, a lot of good pics on that and everything else. I guess the first question to start off tonight is going to be, which is on everybody's mind, what is Bigfoot?
Bigfoot is a large hominid creature that it's sort of hard to put an exact.
Sure. So this is a big hairy creature, correct?
It is. It's
and it's coarse type hair, correct?
It would be coarse type hair. It's like I say, it's large. Generally, an adult ranges from anywhere from 6 to. There have been stories 10 feet and taller. Of course, it gets its name Bigfoot from its very large footprints that it leaves. Generally, the appearance is, aside from being large, the arms are strangely long. About 60% of its body length is the length of its arms. Cone-shaped head, a brow ridge across the eyes, a sloped forehead. The head is usually set down into the shoulders, sort of like a gorilla.
Like no neck.
Correct.
Okay. Yep.
And sort of a strange pendulum-style walk. The legs don't move like a human's would.
Right. Now, there was a film that came out many years ago. I know it's been around for a long time. And one of the things, the last TV show I watched about Bigfoot, they were kind of breaking that film down as to how a human in a costume would walk and how Bigfoot walks. And there was quite a big difference there, Jason, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Because a human's stride would be much different.
Absolutely. The stride of a human is nowhere near as fluent, for one. And there was someone that tried to recreate that exact same course that the creature in this film tried to walk, and it couldn't move as easily across this terrain as the subject in the film did.
Right. It was broke down quite technically, too, as I recall. There was a lot of technology used in that breakdown of that.
Absolutely.
Now, we should tell our listeners that there is a couple of theories on what Bigfoot is. So just so that they can start off, there's the primate theory, which is really the belief that Bigfoot is yet an undiscovered, unknown primate that belongs to the ape family. That's one, Jason. Another one is the evolutionary theory that Bigfoot may be the missing link. And there's a couple more. But based on those two, which one does your team subscribe to?
I can't speak for everyone in the team because there are a few who have different opinions. My thoughts is that it could be closer to a missing link type of creature.
Sure, and we've all studied the missing link and heard about the missing link over years. And the missing link is that one, I don't want to say humanoid, but that one link between ape and man, correct? Is that
Right.
kind of summarize what the missing link is?
Correct.
Okay. So if that's the case, this could be it, because there's a lot of man-like movements with this ape, correct? It doesn't act like an ape, in other words.
Absolutely. It's when you stand back and look at it, it would be the most human-like creature on the planet that's not a human.
Right.
More so than any of the great apes or any monkey. However, there are some very obvious.
Gorillas, chimpanzees, those
Yeah.
stuff. Right, right.
There are the obvious differences.
Right. Now, also, it's my understanding that when we look at Bigfoot and the noises that have been captured on tape, it has a much different vocal system than either an ape would have. Obviously, it doesn't speak English, so it's not a man, but
Right.
It has a different vocal system, correct?
It does. It actually has a very wide range of vocal communication. I mean, they communicate vocally and non-vocally as well. There are some people that have tried to go into their even possibly telepathic. I don't buy into that myself. But they communicate via wood knocking, just taking a stick and hitting it against a tree.
Right.
They break trees, like limbs off trees. That's a way of marking the possible territory.
Wow.
As far as vocally goes, they make different types of whoops, whistling noises, like garbled, mumbly, very rapid noises.
But they don't make noises like an ape, pound their chest or anything like that you're aware of.
Not that I'm aware of. I have heard of a story that there has been some kind of actual hand clapping.
Wow.
I don't know if that would be their version of a chest pounding or not.
Right. I've got to tell our listeners this story that I found on your website. You got to go to this website. It's really fascinating website, even if you don't believe in Bigfoot, which is okay. But you got to go there and see some of this. But the story was about two fellows that were in the woods, and they picked up a rock and tossed a rock into the woods just arbitrarily. And all of a sudden, a very big rock, a boulder type, came back. And the story goes to say that they thought they were up against a couple of pranksters out in the woods. And as it went back and forth, it was almost a game they played. And then they actually got to view this creature that was, I think on your website it says something about 10 feet tall or something. So it appears that Bigfoot has an ability to communicate that way also. I mean, he wasn't throwing the rocks at them. He was throwing the rocks in the vicinity of them.
Right. They're so intelligent that they're into gameplay. I mean, there are members of the crypto crew who have left gifts.
Really?
For the creature in different areas of their home, be it the back deck or away from their home, and whether it be a food type gift or whatever, and they come out the next day and there's a tree branch or a rock that
in place of the gift.
That's in place of the gift.
Wow. So the intention there is that this Bigfoot seems to have the ability to say thank you and here's a gift back to you.
Absolutely.
Albeit a rock or a branch of a tree, correct?
Yes.
That's fascinating. Let me ask you, because I'm always interested when our guests come on, how they get interested in Bigfoot to begin with. So can you tell us how you get interested?
Well, beyond a shadow of a doubt, as long as I can remember, the first time I ever heard of this thing was way back. I saw a special on TV, and I saw the infamous Patterson-Gimlin footage, which I believe is the footage that you had mentioned earlier.
Correct.
I was astonished, and I was only a child. I was very young. From that point on, I was pretty much hooked. Right. I mean, I was just fascinated that this thing could possibly exist on our planet with us and not have been discovered yet.
And especially in New Hampshire.
Exactly.
Right, because the Northwest, and we're going to kind of explain this later on, but the Northwest seems to have a lot of Bigfoot sightings, which would stand to reason because they have probably the most forest land, undeveloped land of the United States, if we were to look at per capita type thing, correct?
Yeah, probably most of it that's never had a human being set foot in it.
Correct. Yeah. So, now, how long have you been investigating Bigfoot?
On my own, I've been doing research of one type or another for many, many years. I've been involved with the crypto crew for, I got involved with them over the last year.
And how long has the crypto crew been around?
I think that they've been, well, Tom will be upset if I don't get this right, but I believe it's been about 5 years
5
now
to 6 years? Yeah.
that the crypto crew has been established.
Yeah, that's great.
I know that.
And where are you based out of?
I'm right in New Hampshire.
Right in New Hampshire. Now, the crypto crew itself is spread out throughout the United States, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and where is Tom based? Tom is the founder, we should tell the listeners. He founded the group. Where is his home base?
He's from Kansas.
Kansas. So this is a group that is spread out throughout the United States. So they have a lot of opportunity to share stories, and they're really investigating, which I think is fascinating, a bigger pot than just New Hampshire. I mean, you're getting stories from all over, correct?
Right, because, I mean, there are sightings from all over. Actually, I mean, strangely enough, you mentioned the amount of sightings in the Northwest. Statistically, the most sightings out of any state so far in the nation is Kansas.
Kansas. Is there a reason for that, Jason?
I believe, again, there's a lot of untamed wilderness, and there's so much opportunity for one to thrive there.
Yeah.
Because of food sources and what have you.
But it doesn't seem like climate controls it then, because if we have sightings in New Hampshire, we have some of the worst winters anywhere, and of course there's a lot of other parts of the country that have severe winters.
Right.
So they must be able to survive in that climate also, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one part is just by sheer body mass. I mean, for instance, you have your polar bears that can survive in Arctic temperatures, and some of these things are barely bigger than your average Sasquatch. There are some people that delve into the fact that they may hibernate. They do tend to build some very rudimentary structures to sleep in, to protect them from certain weathers. They can live in caves.
Now, Bigfoot, is there a difference between Bigfoot and Sasquatch? Or Yeti?
Just by the name only.
I mean, the definitions are pretty much the same, correct?
Right. There's anything from the Yemen in China to a Yowie in Australia. The Yeti is obviously from the Himalayas, and Bigfoot, Sasquatch is just by the name. Sasquatch is the original Indian name, and Bigfoot is what the white man dubbed it just because of its extraordinarily large feet.
Right.
It's pretty much just from what region it's from. It's just called different things, but they're all very, very closely related.
Right.
They'd be cousins.
Yeah, and the other thing that I found fascinating when I was kind of researching this, Jason, was that when you look at reports from all over, at least the United States, I didn't get outside there, but if you look at different reports, they seem to all describe the same type of creature, which lends itself to believability because, you know, if you look at UFO, for example, people tend to describe aliens in many different shapes and forms, and it's not to say they don't come in different shapes and forms.
Right.
But the consistency I saw with Bigfoot was it describes it basically as a creature anywhere from 7 to 10 feet tall, you know, like you said, long arms, long gait, you know, walks very, very broadly, and coarse, dark hair. I mean, it's almost consistent across the board. Do you find that in your investigations?
Absolutely. I mean, it's the only differences that I've ever heard of anybody's are the girth of the creature, sometimes the height of the creature, and that would only make me speculate is what the creature's age would be. Because the juveniles tend to be, obviously they're shorter, they're not as massive through them. The females are also not as broad as the males.
Are there any numbers or statistics, Jason, that tell us how long Bigfoot lives?
None definitively. There are, of the research that I've done, they've decided that it's right around it could be up to the 40 to 50 year range.
40 to 50 years.
Right.
And the other thing is that you look at reports, we never seem to see two. It's always a sighting of one Bigfoot. So what do you think they do about a mate? I mean, I haven't seen too many reports, just researching this one show, which I would tell our listeners of the Paranormal Zone isn't an in-depth research I did, believe me, but it doesn't seem to me that I saw sightings saying I saw two, like we would see with deer, for example.
Right. I believe more often than not that the head of the family would be the male, and he's the one that would go out and do all the foraging, hunting, if you will, searching for better areas, and the rest of the family members would probably remain in a much smaller area unless they happen to be migrating.
Sure, and we see this in Africa with the African lion.
Absolutely.
The male lion does all the hunting and really leaves the nest or crib, if you will, while the female protects the cubs.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, you're listening to WSCA LP 106.1 FM, Portsmouth Community Radio, and we're talking to Jason Morse from the Crypto Group, which they're Bigfoot investigators, but they do a lot of stuff. So go to their website and it'll tell you exactly what they do, and Jason will answer any questions you have on the website if you want to make comments. One of the things looking for this show and the research side of it was that Cheshire County in New Hampshire seemed to me to have a lot of sightings. Now, just to give you some numbers, in 2001 they had 1, in 2005 they had 3, in 2006 they had 3, and then in 2007 they had 2, and Jason was telling me earlier that they've just had a recent sighting. So 3, 6, 8, 9. So let's, for the sake of argument, say there's been 10 sightings in Cheshire County since 2001 in 6 years. That's a lot of sightings, Jason.
It is.
I mean, that's a lot of sightings. Mm-hmm. And you said there's just a recent one somewhere, correct?
Yeah, it's up around the Franconia area. There was a couple of ladies that actually saw one at a relatively close distance, and there actually is a photo of it, and it's on the Crypto Crew website.
On the website. And I want to tell our listeners, anyone who follows the Paranormal Zone hears me say this every guest we have on, but it's so true I like to repeat it. People always say, why isn't there more pictures of UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, for example? You guys do this all the time, why don't you get more pictures? Well, a lot of this, listeners have to understand, is when you turn around and you see a Bigfoot within 10, 20, 30 feet of you, believe me, whether you're an investigator or an amateur, you don't think to grab a camera to get a picture of it. I mean, some of us do that, but not a lot. The other thing with Bigfoot that just amazed me, Jason, was that in the United States, there's 747 million acres of woods. I mean, just a staggering number. Out of that, 363 million acres are owned or protected by the federal government or state government. So if Bigfoot is living happily in these areas, there's another reason why you wouldn't see a lot of sightings of that, correct?
Absolutely.
I mean, but the pictures that you have on your website are really compelling pictures.
We have some that are nothing short of amazing.
Right. Yeah. Now, Jason was showing me, I'm going to ask you to tell us about your experience in a minute, but Jason was showing me a picture he has on his phone that is just unbelievable. Tell us the story about that when you were with your dog.
I was walking around locally with my dog, and as we were walking up the road, I have a 90-pound golden retriever who pretty much loves everything. He all of a sudden came to an abrupt stop and just started to shake, staring off the side of the road into the woods. And as I looked to where he was interested in, I saw a dark figure, and it was slightly moving left to right, almost trying to assess the situation, try to see if the dog was a threat, if I was a threat, whatever. I pulled out my camera because at the time I wasn't 100% sure. It could have been a bear, could have been a deer, could have been some person, as far as I knew, because it was about 150 feet off the road. I pulled out my camera and took a quick picture, and as soon as I brought the camera back down to my hip, I looked back up, and suddenly it stood up, took about 4 strides away from me, and turned its entire upper body to look back towards me. and went out through the brush. And from the way that I saw it, after I took my dog home, I went back out myself. This thing had to have been in the 600-pound, 9.5 foot range.
Wow.
It was enormous.
Wow. And where was this in New Hampshire, Jason?
Right in Newmarket.
Right in Newmarket. Wow.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. And you also captured an unbelievable picture of a footprint.
Yeah, that was a few days afterwards. I would have to say it's from the same subject. It measured across the toes, it was 9 inches, and from the tip of the big toe to the heel was about 20.5 inches.
Wow.
So and those are staggering dimensions for a Bigfoot even. I mean, this is a big boy.
Now, Jason, you're one of the few investigators in New Hampshire on Bigfoot, correct?
Right. I can't say I'm the only. I'm sure that there are a lot of enthusiasts who are interested. I haven't come across many who are actively researching.
Yeah. Now, Jason was saying before the show that you're actually looking for members, correct?
Correct.
We should mention that at this point. So if you're interested in Bigfoot or UFOs or anything for that matter, correct, Jason?
Yes.
Go to Jason's website, the crypto website, and you can ask questions. You can certainly sign up. You can make comments on that, and they'll respond to you. Why don't you give us the website one more time?
Once again, it's www.cryptocrew.com, and across the top you'll see a link for members, and you can also just click on the Contact Us, and you would wind up getting in touch with Tom, who is the head researcher of the Crypto Crew, and he will give you any information necessary to sign up as a member.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about the behavior of Bigfoot. You had a sighting in the woods not too far away. Certainly this creature, if we can call it that, turns and looks at you, so it recognizes you're there. And you're there with a dog, with a four-legged animal, correct?
Right.
But it doesn't make any aggressive moves towards you.
No.
So is this part of its communication, Jason?
I wouldn't say part of its communication. It's part of its normal attitude. In general, they tend to be very, very extremely shy and elusive creatures. They don't want any problem with you any more than you want a problem with them. And most normal people wouldn't want a problem with a 600-pound, 9-foot creature. So they're, along with being shy and elusive, they're also extremely curious. That's why I believe when he was knelt down, he was rocking to the left and the right, just trying, like I said before, trying to assess the situation, trying to just see, what is this person doing with this dog? Is he going to try to come after me? Do I see anything that's remotely considered a threat? And he was just trying to figure me out.
Now, this was during the day, correct?
Yes.
This was daytime. So did they tend to be 24-hour type creatures where they're out at night, they're out during the day? They're not nocturnal necessarily.
They're primarily nocturnal.
They are.
They prefer to do all their moving around at night because they have the cover of darkness to move about more freely without being seen, because their preference would be to never be seen. I mean, they are that shy. However, of course, with many photos and videos that you may see, they do tend to move around during the daytime. Primarily, though, they are nocturnal.
And what is their reading habits? I mean, this is another question we get a lot, from people on the website. They'll ask us, if you're talking to the Bigfoot guy, what do they eat? Are they meat eaters? Are they vegetarians? What do you think their eating habits are?
Depending mainly on the area that they live in, I believe that all of them are what's called omnivorous. They eat both meat, substances, and vegetation. Mainly just because a creature of that size couldn't sustain itself on vegetation alone. I mean, that would be like trying to get around here trying to get a black bear living off only vegetation. It probably couldn't. I mean, even if it's only your occasional rodent, squirrel, bird, if it can catch one, I don't believe it would necessarily scavenge more than it would actually do hunting.
And especially with the severe winters that we tend to have. We didn't last winter, I know, but, we tend to have very severe winters, obviously going north, the worse it gets. So, like a bear who hibernates and eats enough food all year long to carry it through the winter, I would think that the behavior of Bigfoot must track to that a little bit. I mean, it has to be able to store food or something to survive the winters.
I believe so. There's one of two possibilities that I very strongly believe in. One of them is that they're migratory creatures, that when it becomes too cold to be remotely comfortable in this region or any other region, as far as that goes, they will migrate to a place that is a little bit warmer. I don't believe that they would willingly handle sub-zero freezing temperatures for very long.
So do you think that, and that's interesting, do you think that they migrate as far south as the weather gets warmer?
I think that they would migrate enough to get out of
the severe cold.
The typical sub-zero with extreme wind chills that New Hampshire has to offer in February, for instance.
Oh, that's really interesting to me, because that what we're really hearing here is how intelligent this creature happens to be. I mean, certainly it seems to be able to play. It throws rocks. We know that, and that's been reported many times, of the rock throwing and the stick banging and so forth.
Right.
And it seems to have the ability to understand that you're giving it a gift and it returns a gift.
Right.
And now we're not making the quantum leap, but a small leap to say it may be smart enough to get out of the winter and go to Florida, if you will, for the winter around here, like a lot of us do. So it seems to me, Jason, that it's a fairly intellect creature.
The whole migratory thing could be, I mean, no one has ever really come out and said that the Canada goose is an extraordinarily intelligent creature.
Right.
But it knows to go south.
South, yeah.
Could be instinct. It could just be a learned habit.
Right.
Throughout a few thousand years.
Yeah.
They could.
But again, with Bigfoot, what we do know is that there isn't a lot of them, at least that we can identify the population.
Right.
So, to me, if it does migrate, unlike birds or even herds, it tends to migrate with one or two, its partner, and maybe a few of its children or something. It certainly isn't following the herd, if you will.
Correct.
Yeah. Has there ever been any reports of Bigfoot attacking anyone?
There has. There are very few. I don't know if I'd necessarily refer to this as an attack per se, but probably the most famous one, and some of the listeners out there may have even heard of it, was back in 1927. A gentleman by the name of Albert Osterman claims to have been kidnapped by a family of 4, and he was held for 7 days until he finally escaped.
There was a movie about this, wasn't there?
I think it was a very highly dramatized version of that story.
Of the basics, yeah.
Right.
So this Bigfoot captures him somehow in somewhere, and then keeps him 7 days in captivity.
He was in a sleeping bag, and the thing came up and grabbed the end of the sleeping bag and picked him up like a knapsack and just carried him for miles. And he wound up getting what he assumed to be the male father creature ill by giving him snuff out of a snuff can, and he was able to escape that way by incapacitating the large male creature. More recently, back in the mid-'80s, in I forget the county in Kansas now. I think it was Bell County. There was a group of young boys riding their ATVs who claimed to have had an attack experience. They were riding in trails, and they spotted one, and it tried to cut them off on several different occasions. This whole story is also on the Crypto Crew website, so you can, by all means, go to that and read the story in depth. But basically, it tried on numerous occasions to cut off and grab at either the machines or the boys that were riding it. and unsuccessfully, thank goodness. So no one was injured. It was just the kids were scared to death. There was also another one that also in Kansas. It's strange that a lot of the attack problems seem to happen in the South.
Wow.
But also in Kansas, a man claims that he was charged by one. I don't know if
it ran at him or something.
Right, it ran right at him in an aggressive manner.
Right.
We're not sure at this point if he was too far from the main den, perhaps a family situation.
And he was protecting his cubs. Or
that's
whatever.
That's what we pretty much assume.
But by the mere fact, if you buy into the abduction theory there, that he was abducted and held for 7 days, this creature didn't do any harm to him.
No, it was almost like from the story, the way the story is written, it's almost that they wanted to learn about him as much as we want to learn about
them.
It.
Yeah. Which again, I go back to it. The intelligence theory seems to be there for me, at least. That it appears that it's doing. We're going to take a short break. You're listening to WSCA LP 106.1 FM on your radio dial, Portsmouth Community Radio. We're with Jason Morse from the Crypto Crew, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some techniques in Bigfoot hunting, or investigating, I guess is what we call it. And we're also going to kind of chat a little bit about what tools Jason uses and how he goes about doing it. So sit back, relax for a minute, and we'll be all right. Okay, Portsmouth, we're back. Welcome to WSCA LP 106.1 FM Community Radio. We're talking with Jason Morse, and we're going to get back to Jason in a second, but first, a couple of community announcements. The Portsmouth Historical Society invites the public to its annual John Paul Jones birthday party with a free concert by the Seacoast Wind, a U.S. Navy color salute, and a free birthday cake and punch. The party takes place in the gardens of John Paul Jones's house, corner of Middle and State Streets, from 4 to 6 p.m. today. So get over there. I guess it's too late almost now, but, well, it's only 5:30, so you got some time, the extra half hour. Also, the Blue Ocean Society for Marine Conservation is offering a 2-day camp for 4 to 6-year-olds on July 10th and 12th aboard the docked MV Thomas Layton in Portsmouth. If you want to give them a call, it's 431-0260. So we gave you one a little late, but you could still make it. You got about a half hour to enjoy that. So, Jason, we were talking prior to the break about Bigfoot investigations. How do people that think they saw a Bigfoot, how do they report that to you?
Right on the website, cryptocrew.com, there is a link to contact Tom, and just by using that link, they can get in touch with him, let him know that they had a sighting, and there also is a link on there to simply just report a sighting. You can do that, give your name and all the other information, or you can be anonymous if you decide to.
Yeah. So, you know, if you're especially a hiker, I would think, or a camper, you should be susceptible to this, because this is where Bigfoot's environment is. It's in the woods. So if you're an outdoorsy type of hunter, right, Jason, a hunter must, you know, I mean, they go pretty deep into the woods.
They do, yeah.
So do you get a lot of reports from hunters and stuff, people like that?
Strangely, From hunters, not quite so many, especially not recently. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, well, if Bigfoot's as intelligent as we think he is, then or she is, then it may very well come down to that they stay away from areas where, they inherently understand they could be shot.
I mean, that's probably very accurate. I think more often than not, when you're out in the woods, I think the chances of you being watched by a Bigfoot are way better than you seeing a Bigfoot.
You seeing a Bigfoot, sure.
They always know. They have an incredibly keen sense of sight, smell, and hearing. And they always know that you're there long before you know they're there.
Sure, so they avoid you.
Yes.
As do, by the way, a lot of wild animals. I mean, we always think that bears attack humans, and they do, if provoked and so
Right.
forth. But there's a lot of animals that once they get a scent of a human, they run the other way.
Absolutely.
Out of fear and protection. So that could be Bigfoot. Tell me, when somebody does report a Bigfoot sighting to you, tell us the process of your investigation, how you do it.
Well, what we usually do is just we try to get all the information about the sighting. Obviously, where is it? Right down to what were the weather conditions, what was the events surrounding the sighting. Of course, we want a description of what you saw, the creature or creatures.
Any
sometimes.
pictures that you might get?
Absolutely, the pictures that you may have taken. There's a bunch of different things. Some things that most of the listeners out there may not really realize are that important, but it does play a part. Down to what type of noises did it make, and how it reacted when it realized it had been spotted.
Right. So now people report this, and they should give you as much information. What if somebody wants to become a Bigfoot investigator? Is there a long learning curve to that?
It's not really a long learning curve. Tom Markham, who again is the head researcher and founder of the Crypto Crew, he sends out training emails to all of us, and we pretty much have to know him fairly well until before we can actually do some investigations ourselves. Right. It's not like we're tested on them or anything, but he just wants us to be well aware of what's going on and what to ask and what to look for. Again, on the website, you can just click on, if you're interested, you can click on the Become a Member, and there's also a feature on the Facebook page to contact Tom, and if you're interested in becoming an investigator either that or an investigator or interviewer or reporter.
So, one of the things we always tell our listeners on this show is that, whether you believe in Bigfoot or you don't believe in Bigfoot, or you believe in ghosts or you don't believe in ghosts or UFOs, really you have to take this serious enough that don't go do this on your own. If you enjoy walking in the woods, go walk in the woods like you always do, and do that without any fear, because as Jason just explained to us, most of the documented cases has been Bigfoot letting you know he's there, but not really attacking people. A couple of cases of that, but when you think about the number of sightings, that's relatively low. So we're not suggesting stop that, but if you say to yourself, I'm really interested in this, and I want to get into Bigfoot research, go find a group like the Crypto Crew and learn it the right way, and learn how to do it, and why you're doing it, and learn to use the right tools and how to be safe, because that's key to most of this. Whether it's UFO or ghosts or anything else, you've got to be safe. So, Jason, let's talk a little bit about the tools that you use. Do you use any kind of tools that that are different than what you can buy in a store type tools?
No, there's really nothing that you would require specifically that you can't get. I mean, in this area, I can think of a half a dozen stores that I can get everything that I need. For the most part, really all you need nowadays, especially, is a little bit of intuition.
Which is free.
Yeah, and some common sense, which is also free. And most people these days have a cell phone that's capable of pictures and video, and it's amazing what you can get
right
on just a cell phone. You can go all the way up to, you can do purchase some trail cameras that will sense motion. I mean, you can pick those up for as little as $50 up to $500 to $1,000.
Sure, and this is really what hunters tend to use. They strap them to trees,
Right.
and they take still pictures every couple seconds, and that's to see if they get any movement through that area and so forth. And that would be a great tool to use, I would think, Bigfoot hunting, because if you could capture a Bigfoot walking by that camera, that would be a pretty compelling pic, wouldn't it?
There's been numerous pictures that is on the Crypto Crew website that have been taken from trail cameras. Some of them they're hard to deny.
Yeah. Now, Jason's looking for help in this area, correct, Jason? I mean, you encourage people to come in and talk to you about joining and becoming an investigator, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, it's, at the very least, it's a good time to get outside and to meet new people and to have some fun. And who knows, maybe someday we could be amongst the lucky ones that can prove this thing is actually out there and silence some of the naysayers.
Well, one of the things that I've observed in the last 6 months or so is that if you watched paranormal shows on television, without mentioning any of them, we went from ghost hunting first, or maybe UFOs first, actually. I mean, if you put UFOs in the paranormal umbrella. And then we went to ghost hunting, which took off huge. I mean, I don't think even at the time anybody thought they were going to, last 10 years and do 100 and some odd shows. And then, of course, there's been a lot of shows that cottage shows that came out of that. But lately, I've seen a lot of Bigfoot shows. I mean, a lot of them. So that tells me that the interest in the country on Bigfoot is picking up for some reason. I mean, can you tell us what that reason might be? Is it just the internet and the educational part?
I believe that probably is a big thing. And also the fact that, in my opinion only, is simply why not?
Why not?
I'm more the type of person than you show me that it doesn't exist, and I'll believe you 100%. It's hard to put a finger on.
Well, you were saying before the show you're kind of a skeptical believer, and I think a lot of people are. We all go into these things. I don't think too many of us come into the paranormal research field saying there's absolutely ghosts, there's absolutely Bigfoot, there's absolutely UFOs. I believe most of us, like you and I, come in and say, I'm not really sure, but I'm willing to go spend the time to find out.
Absolutely.
And, I always say this, Jason, and I know you and I had this conversation before the show. If you can debunk, if you have 10 episodes of UFO or Bigfoot reports, and you can debunk 8 of them, or 9 of them even, as fraudulent, which is okay. That happens. We're in an unregistered, unlicensed field. Nobody's certified here. So the problem is that you do get people that just put stuff out there to see their reaction. But when you get that picture that you have of Bigfoot in the woods, how can you discount that? That's what I always say to people. Okay, so why do we always want to talk about the 80 or 90% that were fraud? Let's talk about the 1 or the 10% that was real. How do you explain that, right?
Right. And we're not out there, just by saying that we're skeptical believers, we're not saying that if you send us a video that you feel in your heart is very accurate and you don't think that you've been hoaxed, we're not saying that by being a skeptical believer that we're just going to look at it. If we're not completely sure, we're just going to say, he's hoaxed it. It's just a bunch of bull.
Yeah, tell us the process when somebody sends you pictures or somebody sends you video. How do you break that down?
Tom is an absolute genius when it comes to video breakdowns. I honestly myself don't know how he does it. I know he has a lot of different software that he uses to get stills from video. It seems like in most every video, in most every good video, I should say, there's always 1 or 2 frames that you have to really look at that you're like, boy, I know this has every single characteristic of an actual creature. And he's able to pull them out, magnify them, zoom in on certain things.
So you're looking for pixels, you're looking for, I know in ghost hunting, one of the things that we always did was we looked for background sizes, rocks and walls and trees to say, okay, what's relative to that size in that tree? Is that how you guys do that, or how Tom does that?
We was capable of doing that. We always say, if you're going to send a picture in, especially of something like a print especially, put something next to the print that is common, that we know, like put your own foot down beside it and
next to the footprint.
And say, I wear a size 10.5, and this thing is 4 or 5 inches longer than my own foot.
Now, even better still, you showed me a picture you have that you actually put a ruler down there.
Right.
A yellow tape measure, correct?
Yeah.
Because the foot size is kind of relative to how tall the creature might be, correct?
Absolutely.
And is the depth of the foot relative to the weight?
Again, that would depend on the surface that it's on. Naturally, if it's on a hard clay type surface and you have a 1-inch depth of a footprint, then you're talking about a creature that's of significant weight, whereas a person my size would probably not even make a scratch on the surface.
Right.
Now we look at a bunch of different things whenever we get photos and videos, especially of the prints. Typically, a footprint is the width is approximately half of the length, which is definitely way out of characteristic for a human. The human footprint is usually a quarter to a third of the length. With the video, we always look for the arm length. The arms at its side should be down almost to the knees. If we can see the hands at all, the thumbs tend to be very short. From the elbow to the wrist is extraordinarily long in proportion to from the elbow to the shoulder. For some reason, it has elongated forearms. We always look for the coned head. That's always the thing we look for pretty much first.
Right. Now, pictures I've seen of, I think it's the Yeti. Is it the Yeti? Is that the right word for that?
The Yeti from Nepal and Tibet, yeah.
It seems to have a lot of teeth, a lot of sharp, they look like they're very razor-sharp teeth. Yet the pictures that I've seen on websites and stuff of Sasquatch or Bigfoot, if you will, doesn't seem to have that pronounced teeth. Is that a difference between the two, or is it just, perception?
I think it's probably perception. I believe that the creatures are very closely related, and as far as the Yeti or abominable snowman, if you will, actually having a mouth full of razor-sharp fangs or even actual canine teeth, I would have to say probably not.
Not.
I believe that they are.
So that's a depiction in somebody's mind.
And if you put yourself into the shoes of the person that's walking across a snowy tundra and comes across a sight like that, in one's mind, you may see a 15-foot tall creature with long daggers for nails and giant razor-sharp canines, because you are scared out of your mind. And trust me, that's even me, who keeps my eyes open for such things. I was scared.
And you were saying that your golden retriever was virtually shaking. I mean,
right.
The dog sensed that he was there, that Bigfoot was there.
Yeah, I'm sure that probably the creature knew that we were there before the dog realized it, but the dog realized it long before I did, because they keep themselves so well camouflaged, and
which again would stand to reason, because if this is really their habitat, dense forest,
right,
that over years evolution would have them start to adapt to their environment like all animals do. Mm-hmm. Over hundreds of years, so that their camouflage may very well be their protection, correct?
Oh, absolutely. From the coarse, matted type hair that could so closely resemble moss growing off trees to the thin branches that we have locally.
Right.
I mean, they can literally disappear right in front of you.
Yeah, well, you were saying earlier, they see you long before you probably see them.
Right.
Now, again, I got a couple of emails this week once we announced you were coming on, And one of the questions, one of the emails, I thought was a pretty good one, and I wrestled with how to even bring this subject up. But one of the questions was, if Bigfoot exists, let's just talk in the United States, why hasn't there been at least some findings of bones, bodies, their bodies decomp, but especially head bones, jaw bones, feet bone, foot bone would be, evidence. Has bones been recovered that we're not aware of, maybe?
The only bones that I'm aware of that have been definitively found and identified are from a species of giant ape from about 500,000 years ago. Gigantopithecus blacki was what it was called. It was about a 10-foot tall gorilla-type creature. That seems to be what a lot of scientists believe is the descendant that Bigfoot came from. As far as nowadays, I can answer that best by saying the reason that bones or bodies haven't been found is probably the same as the fact that while walking through the woods, how many people see the carcass or skeletal remains of a coyote or a black bear?
Rare.
There are the type of area that we live in is such high acidity that it can break down a carcass very quickly. Not to mention the hundreds of different species of scavengers, all the way down to a porcupine who's known to eat bone.
And the density of the forest.
The density of the forest, exactly. And all the way down to some researchers suggesting that Sasquatch is actually intelligent enough to bury its dead.
Really?
That's been brought up. I'm not sure how much I buy into that. I definitely buy into the whole, if a creature that size dies, there are so many scavengers in the area from, smaller animals that will see it basically as a free meal, and there can be nothing left.
Right. And from the reports I saw too, Jason, it doesn't appear to me that you get sightings in the woods along Route 93, for example, or sightings, off a major road. Most of the sightings to me seems to be once you're fairly deep into the woods, which kind of supports the theory, I think, that it stays into its own environment. It's not a wandering creature that comes out to pursue public.
Absolutely.
That it stays back in the woods, which would be another reason, I think, to say that's why you don't find bones, because it's not like a deer that tries to cross 93,
right,
or a deer that's trying to get out for more food and dies at the edge of the woods, correct? Or is shot by a hunter, for that matter.
Right. It all boils down to them being so extremely shy. They are curious, and they're curious enough to once in a while get caught in a picture, or back in 1967 in Bluff Creek get caught on video. But predominantly, they are just so shy and elusive that's the main reason why we can't get a good, up-close, full-length, absolute photograph or video evidence that...
Right. Now, did your team have a chance to look at that video? Have you guys broke that video down?
The PG film?
Right.
Absolutely.
You have. And what's your conclusion as a professional?
100% accurate. That is a live creature.
So you don't think that... I just saw a show on television not too long ago that one side was arguing that it was a person in a costume. Matter of fact, you're probably aware of this. We have somebody here in New Hampshire that just won a lawsuit that dressed up like Bigfoot. Are you aware of that? And
I hadn't actually heard of that.
Yeah, if you go on and research Bigfoot, he dressed as Bigfoot. He went out and he was arrested. Now there's a big lawsuit saying he has a right or he doesn't have a right to do that. But he was in a Bigfoot costume. But your group has broke this film down, and you believe that is not a costume. You believe that's a true video of a true Bigfoot.
Absolutely. The way that it walked, its gait, all the way down to, if you watch very closely, I believe it's around frame 152 when, and I will say she turns around and looks at the camera, because it most certainly is female, because it has very pronounced breasts. When she turns around and looks, if you go back and forth between there's two frames that are 2 frames apart from each other, you can see the eye blink and the mouth opens and closes. On top of that, it looks as though it has some type of herniated abnormality on, I believe it's the right thigh. There's a lump that moves when it walks. And there's another series as it's walking away, swinging its arms. You can actually see the muscles moving under the skin. In 1967, there was no possible way to mimic that. There was no technology to make a suit that physically accurate.
Well, now where can our listeners go to see that particular video? Do you guys have a website they can go to for that?
If you go,
you can Google.
The very easiest way. There's several different versions of it on YouTube.
On YouTube?
Yeah, that you can find it. There's been several programs on TV that have, like, hour-long programs that have done nothing but break that video down.
Right.
You can keep your eyes open for that on some of the science channels.
Yeah, I think if you can go, if you Google Bigfoot video, I think that usually is the one that comes up. You'll see other ones, but that one will be there, because that's probably, if we're to believe it's true, and I happen to be a believer, I watched them try to debunk it, and very professional people that do this for a living could not debunk it. They just they said what your crew said, that it's definitely not a human person moving there, and they did all of the tests. And you can look at that. Our listeners can look at that, Jason, and make your own decisions. But if it's to be believed, and I think it is, then that really is answers the question: is Bigfoot real? I mean, that just answers the question, because if that's not a Bigfoot, then what is it? Yeah. You can't have it both ways. I mean, if you believe it, then Bigfoot exists. And we have to understand, because we don't always see ghosts, because we don't see UFOs all the time, because we don't see Bigfoots on a regular basis, doesn't mean they don't exist. Explorers and scientists are finding animals that we never knew existed before.
Right.
That humans have never laid eyes on before, and we still find them. So what's to say that Bigfoot isn't one of those animals, right?
The one thing that I always enjoy saying is, when someone says, if there is such a creature, how come it hasn't been proven yet? And that brings me to a couple of different things. One, 150 years ago, the mountain gorilla was unknown. There were stories of tribespeople who said there are these giant hairy men, running around in the forest, and people thought they were crazy. Well, Jane Goodall proved those people wrong.
Right.
Most recently, in Africa, there's a new species of chimpanzee called the billy ape. It's a 6-foot-tall chimpanzee.
Wow.
That it was just discovered several years ago.
Right.
And it just goes to show, given the right habitat, given the right environment, and the right range of territory, I mean, there's no way to tell.
Right.
The only place that there's more room to roam than the rainforest and jungles and forests of this planet is in the ocean.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, 747 million acres.
Exactly.
Wondering. Well, Jason, you listen. You have been a great guest. I'm so glad to have you on, and you got to promise me you're going to come back.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Because we're going to have follow-up questions for sure, and there's a lot we didn't get to tonight, and I apologize for that. But Jason, you did a great job, and I appreciate it, and we'd be glad to have you back. Let's give our listeners one more website update, because if you're interested in this is the professional you want to talk to about it. He knows more about Bigfoot than anyone I've ever talked to. And this crew, I've done some research on him, and the crypto crew is one of the most professional crews out there. So I always tell our listeners, make sure you know who you're chatting with. So give us your website one more time.
It's www.cryptocrew.com, and you can also like us on Facebook, where you can see all of our videos and interviews at www.facebook.com/the Crypto Crew.
Jason, thanks again. Okay, next week, we won't have a Paranormal Zone next week. Yours truly is taking some time off, but we will be back the following week with our friends from Northeast Paranormal Associates to talk about some of the tools that they use. So I hope you have a great week, everyone, and stay tuned.